My name is Dara Kessler. I am 39 years old, and for the past 14 months, my brother Julian has been telling every member of our extended family, our father's former business partners, and our synagogue community in Rochester, New York, that I was deliberately excluded from our mother's estate because she discovered I had been stealing from her during the final years of her life. I am here to correct the record, permanently. The specific version Julian has circulated goes like this. He told people that our mother, Helene Kessler, sat him down 6 weeks before she died and confessed that she had found discrepancies in her household accounts, that she wept while telling him I had been siphoning money through fraudulent medical reimbursement claims, that she begged Julian to protect the family's assets, that she personally instructed her attorney to remove me from the will entirely and leave the full estate, including the house on Culver Road, the rental property on East Avenue, and roughly $410,000 in liquid accounts solely to Julian. That is what people have been told. That is the version currently in circulation, and every single element of it is a fabrication constructed to cover something Julian did not expect anyone to find. I know the exact moment I first heard it repeated back to me. November 9th, a Thursday, 7:40 in the morning. I was standing in the basement archive of Monroe County's Office of Vital Records, pulling a death certificate for an unrelated case. A clerk named Bonnie, who had known my mother through the East Side Women's League, set down her coffee and said without any particular cruelty, "I was sorry to hear about your mom, and I'm sorry about the money thing. Julian told Diane Petrosian everything. It must be awful having that follow you around." She said it the way someone mentions weather, casually, already digested, already accepted as fact. I did not respond immediately. My hand was resting flat on the laminate counter, and I could feel the static hum of the fluorescent lights through my fingertips. Something behind my sternum went very still. I was not upset. I was reading the architecture of what had just been said to me. Who told whom? In what order? Using what specific language? I was already mapping the chain. Mast gobtings the mirenengo. That is what I do for a living. I am a medical billing compliance auditor. For 11 years, I have investigated fraudulent claims, fabricated reimbursement codes, and falsified patient records for a regional health insurance consortium. My entire professional life is built around one skill: reading a document trail and identifying the exact point where someone started lying. I can distinguish a legitimate billing error from a deliberate falsification in under 40 minutes by cross-referencing submission timestamps, provider identification numbers, and payer remittance codes. That skill had exposed $14 million in fraudulent claims across 312 cases over the past decade. It was about to dismantle my own brother's story, line by line, receipt by receipt. Before I show you the evidence that makes Julian's version of events structurally impossible, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Because the version of this story that has been circulating did not stay in Rochester. It traveled. It reached people I have never met. I want you to have the real one. Every document, every date, every number. Let me go back to the system that made Julian's lie possible in the first place. My mother was diagnosed with early-stage vascular dementia in January of 2021. She was 71. The diagnosis was not sudden. I had noticed the signs 18 months before any doctor confirmed them. Small things at first. She paid the same electric bill 3 times in 1 month. She left a burner on overnight twice in the same week. She began confusing my name with her sister's, a sister who had been dead for 9 years. By the time the neurologist at Strong Memorial confirmed the diagnosis, I had already reorganized her filing system, consolidated her accounts into 2 manageable checking and savings setups, and installed a lockbox in her bedroom closet for original documents. Julian lived 40 minutes away in Pittsford with his wife Renee. He visited our mother perhaps once every 5 or 6 weeks, usually on a Sunday, usually for under 2 hours. He brought flowers occasionally. He never stayed long enough to notice that she had started writing her grocery lists in a language that did not exist. He never opened the medicine cabinet to see that she had been doubling her blood pressure medication because she forgot she had already taken it. He never sat on the edge of her bed at 2 in the morning while she wept and asked where her husband was. 3 years after our father's death, I did. Every week, sometimes 4 times a week. I drove the 22 minutes from my apartment on Park Avenue to her house on Culver Road in every season, in every weather, through every stage of her decline. I cooked her meals in containers labeled with the day and reheating instructions written in large print. I drove her to neurology appointments, cardiology follow-ups, dental cleanings. I managed her insurance claims, her property tax filings, her rental income deposits from the East Avenue duplex. I handled all of it because I was the one who was there, not because I expected anything. Because I was her daughter, and she needed me. And every time I mentioned to Julian that her condition was progressing, every time I suggested we discuss long-term care planning or look into power of attorney options, his response was consistent and unvarying. "You're closer. You handle it. Just keep me in the loop." He said this the way someone delegates a task they consider beneath them. No urgency, no guilt, no follow-up questions. The irony is that I spent my entire professional career identifying exactly this pattern. One party does all the administrative labor. Another party maintains emotional distance until assets become relevant. Then the distant party reappears with paperwork and a narrative. I had written that pattern into audit reports dozens of times. I had flagged it as a risk indicator in compliance trainings I led for hospital administrators. And I watched it unfold in my own family without naming it, because naming it would have meant accepting that my brothers saw our mother's decline as an opportunity rather than a loss. Our mother died on September 14th, a Saturday, at 6:18 in the morning. I was holding her hand. Julian arrived 4 hours later, already wearing a suit. The funeral was held the following Tuesday at Temple Brith Kodesh. Julian delivered a eulogy that lasted 11 minutes. He mentioned her garden. He mentioned her brisket. He mentioned her devotion to family. He did not mention that I had been her primary caregiver for over 3 years. He did not mention that I had been present for her final breath. He spoke about her as though he had known her daily life, and the congregation believed him because he spoke with confidence and wore grief the way some people wear expensive cologne, just enough to be noticed. 10 days after the funeral, Julian called me. His voice was casual, almost administrative. "I met with Mom's attorney yesterday," he said. "The entire estate goes to me. She changed the will. You were left out." He did not say he was sorry. He did not ask if I was okay. He delivered the information as though confirming a shipping update. I said nothing for 4 seconds. I counted them. Then I said, "Which attorney?" He paused. "Arthur Greenbaum, same one she always used." I said, "Send me a copy of the will." He said, "I don't think that's necessary, Dara. It's pretty clear-cut." I said, "Send it." He said he would have Arthur's office forward it. I never received it. What I received instead, over the following weeks, was the social fallout. Relatives stopped returning my calls. My cousin Beth, who had always been warm, sent me a single text message that read, "I think you should talk to someone professional about what happened. I'm praying for you." My mother's friend Gloria from the Women's League crossed the street to avoid me at the Pittsford Wegmans. The story Julian had planted was growing roots in every direction, and I had not yet seen the document it was supposedly based on. So I began the audit. The first thing I did was contact Arthur Greenbaum's office directly. I identified myself, provided my mother's full legal name and date of death, and requested a copy of the most recent testamentary document on file. Arthur Greenbaum's paralegal, a woman named Christine, was polite but guarded. She said she would need authorization from the executor. I asked who the executor was. She said Julian Kessler. I asked when the most recent will had been executed. She hesitated, then said she would need to check the file and call me back. She never called back. 3 days later, I filed a formal request through Monroe County Surrogate's Court to access the probate filing. What arrived in the mail 11 days later was a 6-page document titled Last Will and Testament of Helene Ruth Kessler, dated April 3, 2023. The document named Julian as sole beneficiary of all real property, liquid assets, and personal effects. It named Julian as executor. It revoked all prior testamentary instruments. I sat at my kitchen table with the document for a long time. The overhead light was the only illumination. My coffee went cold. Something inside me went perfectly still, the way it does when I am 3 pages into a billing audit and the numbers have just stopped making sense in a way that means someone made them stop making sense on purpose. I read the will 4 times, and on the 4th reading I found it. The notarization block at the bottom of page 6 listed the notary as 1 P. Desmond, commission number 0148379291, Monroe County. The stamp was clean. The signature looked professional. But the commission number format was wrong. New York State notary commission numbers follow a specific structure. They are assigned sequentially by the Secretary of State's office and carry a 2-digit prefix indicating the county of commission. Monroe County commissions in the relevant period began with 02, not 01. The 01 prefix corresponds to Albany County. No notary commissioned in Monroe County in 2023 would carry an Albany prefix. It was a small error, almost invisible. The kind of error someone makes when they pull a template from a legal document generator and do not verify the jurisdiction-specific formatting. Then I found something else. I requested the original notarization log from the Secretary of State's Division of Licensing. Commission number 0148379291 had been assigned to a notary named Patricia Desmond, who had been commissioned in Albany County in 2019 and whose commission expired in September of 2021, 2 full years before this will was allegedly notarized. The notary whose stamp appeared on my mother's will had not been a licensed notary at the time the document claimed to have been executed. Then I found something else. I obtained metadata from the digital file Arthur Greenbaum's office had used to generate the printed document. I did this through a discovery motion filed by the attorney I had retained, a woman named Sonia Farrick who specialized in estate fraud litigation. The document properties showed it had been created on September 22, 8 days after my mother's death. The author field listed not Arthur Greenbaum, not any paralegal at his firm, but a user identified as J. Kessler's home. The document had been created on Julian's personal computer, uploaded to Greenbaum's shared file system, and printed on Greenbaum's office letterhead. Then I found something else. And this is the part that made everything before it feel small. Sonia Farrick subpoenaed my mother's actual file from Arthur Greenbaum's office, not the probate filing, the complete client file including prior drafts, correspondence, and billing records. Buried in a folder of unsigned drafts was the genuine last will and testament of Helene Ruth Kessler, executed in March of 2020, 3 years before the forged version claimed to exist. It had been properly witnessed by 2 of Greenbaum's staff members, properly notarized by a licensed Monroe County notary with the correct prefix, and its terms were clear. The estate was to be divided equally between Julian and me, with the Culver Road house designated specifically to me in recognition of, and I am quoting the document directly, her consistent and devoted care during my declining health. My mother had written me into her will not as an afterthought, but as an acknowledgement. She knew what I had done. She had made sure it was recorded. Julian had not merely lied about the will's contents. He had manufactured a replacement document, infiltrated his own mother's attorney's file system, and planted it as the operative version, all within 8 days of her death. He had then used the forged document to probate the estate, naming himself executor and sole heir, while simultaneously spreading a defamatory narrative designed to ensure that if I ever challenged the will, no one in our community would believe me. I took everything to Sonia Farrick's office on a Tuesday afternoon. The documents filled a 3-ring binder. She looked at the notary discrepancy, the metadata printout, the original will, and the client file correspondence. She closed the binder, set it down, and said, "This is not a family dispute, Dara. This is forgery. This is fraud upon the court. I want to tell you about the hearing. It took place on a Wednesday morning in the Monroe County Surrogate's courtroom, a room with dark walnut paneling and tall windows that let in gray winter light. Julian arrived in a navy suit with Renee beside him. Arthur Greenbaum sat at the respondent's table looking pale and diminished. The courtroom was not full, but it was not empty. Several family members sat in the gallery. My cousin Beth was there. Gloria from the Women's League was there. Julian's attorney opened by asserting that the April 2023 will reflected Helene Kessler's final and clearly expressed wishes, that I had been removed due to documented financial irregularities, and that my challenge was motivated by resentment. Julian sat with his hands folded, projecting the same composed confidence he had worn at the funeral. Sonia Farik rose and placed 4 exhibits on the evidence table. Exhibit 1, the Notary Commission verification showing P. Desmond's license had expired 2 years before the will was allegedly executed. Exhibit 2, the document metadata showing the will had been authored on Julian's personal computer 8 days after our mother's death. Exhibit 3, the original March 2020 will from Greenbaum's own client file, properly executed and never revoked. Exhibit 4, a sworn affidavit from Christine, Greenbaum's paralegal, confirming that Julian had requested after-hours access to his mother's file on September 20th, under the pretense of retrieving personal photographs stored in the office. Julian's composure did not break immediately. He turned to his attorney and whispered something. His attorney requested a brief recess. The judge denied it. Julian then stood and addressed the court directly, which his attorney tried to prevent. "My mother told me she wanted to change the will," he said, his voice tight. "She expressed that verbally, multiple times. I was honoring her wishes." Sonia Farik asked one question. "Can you produce a single witness, a single piece of correspondence, a single medical record, or a single contemporaneous note documenting your mother expressing this wish at any point during her life?" Silence. Julian looked at Renee. Renee looked at the table. Julian tried again. "Dara manipulated our mother. She isolated her. Everyone in the family knows this." He gestured toward the gallery. "Ask anyone here." My cousin Beth shifted in her seat. Gloria looked at her hands. Sonia Farik did not respond to the accusation. She placed a 5th document on the table. A printout of the text message Julian had sent to our father's former business partner, Howard Fine, 3 weeks after the funeral. The message read, "It's handled. The estate is consolidated. Dara won't challenge it. She doesn't have the stomach for court, and nobody will back her up after what I told them." Julian stared at the printout. His jaw moved, but no sound came. The judge asked if Arthur Greenbaum wished to make a statement. Greenbaum's own attorney advised him to invoke his right against self-incrimination. The judge noted this for the record. Then Christine stood. She had not been expected to appear in person. She had submitted her affidavit in writing, but she was there, seated in the 2nd row of the gallery, and she asked the judge for permission to address the court. The judge allowed it. Christine stated that on the evening of September 20th, Julian had arrived at the office after hours with a USB drive. She had been working late on another matter. She saw him access the client file room. She did not intervene because he identified himself as a family member retrieving personal items. But she noted the date and time in her personal calendar because, she said, something about the visit felt wrong. She had reported her concern to Arthur Greenbaum the following morning. Greenbaum told her to drop it. The room was very quiet after Christine sat down. I had one thing to say. The judge gave me the opportunity to address the court. I stood. I did not look at Julian. I looked at the judge. Julian did not inherit our mother's estate. He intercepted it. And he counted on the fact that the people who loved her would trust his grief more than they trusted my silence. I sat down. I did not add anything. The surrogate judge vacated the fraudulent will, restored the valid March 2020 will to operative status, removed Julian as executor, and appointed an independent fiduciary to administer the estate. The judge referred the case file to the Monroe County District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation into forgery, fraud upon the court, and filing of a falsified instrument. 13 days after the hearing, the District Attorney's Office opened a formal investigation. Julian retained a criminal defense attorney. Arthur Greenbaum's law license was placed under review by the New York State Grievance Committee after Christine's testimony prompted an independent ethics inquiry. His practice was suspended pending investigation. Within 6 weeks, Greenbaum surrendered his license voluntarily rather than face a formal disciplinary hearing. Julian and Renee listed their Pittsford house for sale in February. It sold below asking price. The proceeds were seized to satisfy a preliminary restitution order for estate funds Julian had already withdrawn and spent during the months he controlled the accounts. His contracting business lost 3 municipal clients after the court records became public. Renee filed for legal separation in March. My cousin Beth called me on a Sunday evening in late January. She did not apologize immediately. She asked if we could talk. I said yes. She came to the Culver Roadhouse the following Saturday. We sat in the kitchen, at the same table where I had found the notary discrepancy. She said she had believed Julian because his version arrived first, and it arrived with tears. She said she should have called me before deciding what was true. She said she was ashamed. I told her I heard her. I did not tell her it was fine. It was not fine. She stayed for an hour. She helped me wash the dishes. When she left, she paused at the door and said, I told Gloria the real version, and Howard Fine, and Rabbi Stern. I cannot undo what I repeated, but I can replace it. I nodded. I closed the door. Gloria sent a card. It arrived in a lavender envelope with no return address, but I recognized her handwriting. Inside it said, I crossed the street. I will carry that for a long time. I put the card in the drawer beside my mother's reading glasses. I did not write back. Not yet. The independent fiduciary completed the estate distribution in April. The Culver Roadhouse was transferred to my name. The liquid assets were divided according to the original will's terms, though Julian's half was immediately subject to the restitution order. I received my share in full. The East Avenue rental property was sold, and the proceeds placed into a trust I established for my mother's Women's League chapter to fund annual community health screenings, something she had organized every spring for 15 years before her diagnosis made it impossible. There was something I had postponed for a long time. During the 3 years I spent caring for my mother, I had deferred enrollment in a graduate program in health systems administration at the University of Rochester. The acceptance letter had arrived in 2021. I set it aside because there was no possible way to manage coursework, a full-time auditing position, and my mother's escalating care needs simultaneously. I told myself I would get to it eventually. Eventually kept moving further away. In May, I submitted my re-enrollment application. I was accepted for the fall semester. I sat in the registrar's office and signed the paperwork at a wooden desk near a window. The woman processing my forms asked if I wanted a printed copy of my enrollment confirmation. I said yes. She handed it to me, and I held it for a moment. My full name, correctly spelled. My program, correctly listed. A document with my future on it that no one had altered. I think about what it costs to let a false story circulate without correction. Not the embarrassment, not the isolation, the structural cost. Every person who repeated Julian's version without verifying it became a load-bearing wall in a building made of fabrication. They did not intend to be architecture. Most of them believed they were simply passing along something sad but true. But each repetition made the lie more stable, more difficult to dismantle, more real in the minds of people who had no reason to doubt it. The correction of a false record is not vengeance, it is maintenance. It is the refusal to let a manufactured version of your life become the permanent one, simply because it was spoken more loudly and more often than the truth. I do not believe Julian started out intending to destroy his relationship with me. I believe he started out believing he deserved more than he had been given, and that belief fermented in silence until it became a plan. The lie about me was not the cause. It was the scaffolding. He needed people to distrust me before he could take what was mine. And the most efficient way to accomplish that was to reverse the roles. Make the caregiver the thief. Make the absent son the protector. If enough people believed it, the documents would not matter. He was almost right.